Welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Matt. I'm the founder of Q4Launch, and we are excited you guys are along for the ride for us today in this oh so important topic of how to develop your 2020 marketing budget. And it is such an important topic. Statistics say that 61% of small business owners don't do a budget, which is tough. It's shocking. It's a big stat. And I applaud you for making today a priority as you're planning your 2020, which so many of us are finding us in the beginnings of those seasons, or maybe you're well into budgeting season at your hotel or B&B or vacation rental company. Wherever you are on that journey, excited that you've prioritized this, as it's so important to establish your marketing budget as a part of your overall business budget. So it's not probably the sexiest topic we've ever taught. It's probably not the least sexy topic we've ever taught either. But it's an absolutely critical one, and one that I think as we go through the next couple of months leading up to the end of the year is going to be a critically important topic for all of us to be thinking about and to be addressing inside of our own businesses. So excited that you prioritize this. Real quick here at the top of the hour, my name is Matt. As I said, I'm the founder of Q4Launch. Q4Launch is a hospitality marketing agency. We specialize in putting heads in beds that works with vacation rental managers, bed and breakfast, boutique hotels, and small resorts and destination marketing organizations from Maui to Singapore and just about everywhere in between. So that's a little bit about us. I know we have several first-time attendees on today's, which I was a little surprised to see we had first-time attendees on our how to develop your budget topic. That's not one that usually draws first-time attendees, but it shows that you're prioritizing and probably running a great business by making this webinar a priority for your business. So we're going to dive into a lot today, but one thing we're going to talk about is change. And we've talked about it a lot in recent webinars. You're hearing it all around the industry, but the only constant is change, and there's been a tremendous amount of it this year. We're looking ahead at a tremendous amount of it for 2020, and budgeting accordingly and preparing for that change is going to be really critical for your success in 2020. Over the coming months, we're going to teach a lot of topics and dive deep into how to execute on a lot of the topics we're going to talk about from a high level today. So today we're going to kind of talk about how to prepare your budget, and then in the coming weeks leading up to the end of the year, we're going to teach you how to execute on the things that you're budgeting for. Whether you're doing those things yourself or you're working with a partner to do those things for you, we're going to teach you the how-to on how to execute on many of those things. So those are going to be a lot more fun. They're going to be a little sexier, if you will. But this is a critical foundation to really establish what we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks. So we'll make sure to watch your inbox for those, watch our website for those, our social media pages for those announcements of our upcoming webinars as well. With that, let's dive into our topic at hand today. All right, so developing your 2020 marketing budget starts with an understanding of what worked and what didn't in 2020. So if you want to know where you're going, you have to know where you are. And you have to know where you've come from and how you got there to be able to develop a successful strategy for where you're going. And then at the core level, a Google Analytics analysis is really going to be your core tool to establish what has worked, what hasn't worked, where is your revenue coming from. So many of us can just break open a spreadsheet, dive in, get uber geeky about the numbers and start budgeting and getting in that, and that's great. But I would say pause, like wait just a minute and do an analysis of where you are, what's working, what's not working, and what do you need to do different next year? Because that's going to be such a critical component to being able to say, okay, do we need to make changes in our marketing budget? And today we're going to talk about some changes you might need to make in your marketing budget based on some of the things we're forecasting for 2020. But understanding where you are is such a critical component in that. And that's not just something to do at the end of the year. That's something we're constantly analyzing for our customers, adjusting like, okay, where are we? How are things going? And then having conversations about, hey, where do we need to pick things up? What's going well? And being able to bring additional strategies to the table in those times where things aren't, going the way we want them to, or we need to pick up some bookings or whatever. But understanding where you are is so critical in creating a strategy to get where you want to go. And as we do that, not just understanding where our traffic is coming from, but more importantly than just traffic, what traffic ultimately becomes is bookings. When I talk about traffic to our website or talking to a potential customer about traffic, it's easy to geek out and just talk about traffic, but making sure that you understand traffic is potential customers. They are people that will or will not decide to book with you on any given day. So you've got to be thinking about that and understanding that, and then ultimately understanding where's Waldo in all of this, right? If you can go for a throwback with me to your Where's Waldo days, any Where's Waldo fans, you got Halloween coming up. So hopefully somebody on today's webinar has got a Where's Waldo costume in the closet. They're breaking out this Halloween. But where did your bookings come from? Where are you finding your guests? Where are you finding your bookings? And breaking that down by percentage at a high level, and we're going to break this down a little bit more granularly later in the webinar today, but at a high level, what percentage of your bookings are coming direct? And direct is anything that books really via your website or via the phone. Like those are the two big buckets of that. And then within that, there are channels of direct. So organic search is a channel, paid search is a channel, email marketing is a channel, direct traffic is a channel within inside of direct, can be confusing. Referral traffic is a channel inside of your direct booking strategy. What are those channels? And we're going to break that down a little more specifically later on. And at the core, that's what we do, right? For our customers, we represent their direct booking strategy. We're working to help them drive more direct bookings, be less reliant on the OTAs. That's the name of the game. That's what 99% of vacation rental managers, hoteliers, bed and breakfast innkeepers are trying to accomplish, is less reliance on the OTAs. Because as we're going to look at as well, OTA bookings are expensive. What percentage of your bookings come from OTAs? What percentage of your bookings come from travel agents or some other third party that you might be doing business with, or just some other source in general? Like, you need to know these buckets. While it's a lot easier for you guys to figure out these buckets, we analyze this stuff as well at our company. Where are our bookings coming from? Where are our customers coming from? What conferences are we meeting them at? What industries are they coming out of? What webinars are they attending? What email campaigns are they opening? What pages are they going to on our site? Like, we're analyzing that in our own marketing, and then building strategies to adjust to those things accordingly and budget for those things accordingly. You know, if we've been to a conference and it's just not clicking for us there, we're going to strike that one out of the budget for this year and try to pick up one for next year. But what are those opportunities we're looking for? And then ultimately for you as a hotelier, as a vacation manager, as an innkeeper, where are your bookings coming from? And this is such a foundational element to building your strategy for 2020 and being able to understand where to invest your marketing dollars. And as you're thinking about that, asking yourself this question: are you happy with this mix, or are you trying to drive shift? And what I mean by shift is, are you trying to drive shift in any of these numbers? Are you trying to drive high level shift and then I want to grow my revenue 20%? Okay, we need to shift into a higher gear to be able to do that and invest into a strategy to grow revenue 20%. Are you trying to keep the size of revenue you have, but get less OTA business and more direct business? Okay, we need to invest into that and understand that reducing what it means to reduce our OTA costs from a cost per booking or cost per acquisition perspective. Like, understanding that mix is so foundational to being able to develop the strategy of where you're going. Take some work to really flesh that data out, and you're going to have to extrapolate some things. Really difficult to get accurate data on the phone side of that. So you're going to have to extrapolate some things out there to be able to do it, but it can be very effective in formulating your strategy for next year. A few other questions I would encourage you to ask before you start the budgeting process. Are you happy with your 2020 revenue? Like, that's a key question to ask. And if you're not happy with it, how are you going to grow it? Are you going to book more nights? Are you going to raise more? Are you going to raise your rates? Are you going to run some special offer? Are you going to add some other feature product thing to your product mix to be able to sell that in addition to your room or rental revenue? Are you going to bring more homes onto your rental program? How are you going to grow your revenue? And how you're going to grow your revenue and being able to answer that question leads into how you're going to have to budget to accomplish that growth that you're trying to have. Because your budgeting is really setting out all of your resources and saying, okay, I have time, I have money, I have these things available to me, I have these resources available. How am I going to move these resources around my business chessboard to accomplish the goal that I want to accomplish? And understanding that you always have to invest ahead of accomplishing the goal. It's very rare in business that you accomplish the goal and then invest on the other side of it, right? Accomplishing the goal usually means you have to invest on the other side of it. You have to invest in whatever. You have to invest in more staff, a larger office, more properties, higher quality. You have to make investments. Growth forces those investments. But on the front side, you have to look at it and say, okay, what am I going to invest in 2020 to accomplish the revenue goals, the profitability goals, the growth goals, whatever goals you have set for yourself. And this one kind of ties back to the last question we looked at, but are you happy with the source of your bookings? Is that mix comfortable for you? You know, if one of the OTAs that you're heavily reliant on changes their fee structure, how will that affect your business? If they call you tomorrow and say, okay, we used to be at 18%, now we're at 25%, how will that affect your business? Will that crush your bottom line? Are you in a place to say, okay, at 25%, I don't want that anymore, and turn it off? Like, you've got to understand where you are in that mix and forecast and say, okay, if I lost that mix, if that mix changed, if that mix got more expensive, what would that look like? Maybe you're a vacation manager and you get a ton of business from Vrbo. You need to think about, okay, what if Vrbo switches from a subscription style platform, because they're like one of the only ones left, and switches into a pay per booking platform? What would that look like if I went from $499 a year to 8% or 12% or 15% of my bookings? Could I survive that? And if not, you need to invest in driving shift in that as well. So there's a lot of things to think about when we think about where do our bookings come from. And we're going to give you some data on that later on as it relates to direct. But then also understanding what stage is your business in. What stage is it in now, and what stage is it going to enter into in 2020? As many of you know who follow our webinar series on a regular basis, we've been growing tremendously over the past 5 years. We've gone from essentially 2 people to about 50 people on our staff in the last 5 years, and it's been an exciting journey, but we have moved through a lot of different stages in that. And we've had to make a lot of different budget decisions and investment decisions and growth investments to drive where we're trying to go and provide the quality for our customers that we want to provide on that journey, so that they don't feel like we're growing, that they feel like, yeah, it's the same Q4 that's always taken care of me and has supported me. And not just the same, like, because sometimes that can be a bad thing, but developing new innovations at the same time and leading into that from a growth perspective. And we're really excited about some of the new innovations we're rolling out this fall. So stay tuned for more information on that in future weeks. But then what changes do you see in your competitive landscape? You know, we all see changes in our competitive landscape. There may be a new hotel being constructed down the street from you. There may be new vacation rental managers popping up all around you. There are tons of changes. There may be new markets coming on board. I was reading a report from AirDNA preparing for this webinar, and it talked about the shift in bookings happening. And when one destination is increasing in popularity, that typically means another destination is decreasing in popularity, right? I mean, there's just not that much growth happening. I was talking to a prospective innkeeper in the Asheville area yesterday and talking about, man, you're buying an inn in a great market, but it has seen tremendous growth over the last couple of years. So you got to think about that, and how do you plan for that within your business strategy? So there's local change happening. There's national change happening, not just competitors popping up, but OTAs and what they are doing, growth Airbnb is seeing, growth other platforms are seeing. That's a lot of change happening. A lot of change happening on the Google side. So maybe not even in the competitive landscape as much, but in a provider that you might partner with or use. Like, what change is happening there, and how do you need to respond? And trying to look into 2020 a bit. And in the next few weeks, we're going to be teaching, I think it's actually late November, we're going to be teaching a webinar just about what's happening in Google and what do you need to do in your business as a result of it. I just taught the session at the VRMA conference in New Orleans last week, and it was standing room only, people crowded out in the hall. Tremendous session. We had a ton of fun, learned a ton in there, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to make it applicable to everybody, so we're going to talk about how it's affecting our hotels and our innkeepers as well, because there's a lot that's affecting everybody the same way, in a unique way. But keep an eye on your inbox for that coming late November, that specific webinar about Google 2020. So some great questions that you should be asking. Probably the most common question we get when it comes to budgeting, which I'll be honest, we don't often get questions about budgeting because most people don't talk about it. 61% of people don't do it, so most people don't talk about it. But that's, what percentage of gross revenue should I be budgeting for marketing? Or what percentage should you be marketing? And we're going to share some general principles for you. It's really difficult to do that because so many of you are in different places in your business, but some general principles that you will hopefully find helpful. So smaller companies, and you've got to think about yourself and decide where you are on that. Smaller companies have to budget a higher percentage of revenue for marketing, meaning it's just difficult. It's difficult to be profitable and small at the same time. And you have to think differently. You have to be scrappier. You have to be a little more bootstrap, a little more guerrilla when you're a smaller company. You've got to budget a higher percentage of revenue for marketing. And I'll tell you, probably the first 3 years of our growth, we probably budgeted 15 to 20% of our gross budget for marketing. And it was expensive and it was painful, but we had to do that to accomplish the long-term goals that we had set out for ourselves. We had to sacrifice the short term to achieve the long-term goals that we had for ourselves. Larger companies are able to budget more money and have to budget more money, but will budget a lower percentage of their overall revenue. So as we've matured a little bit as a company, which is crazy. If any of my friends were on this road, they were like, Matt, mature? Yeah, right. But, you know, it's this understanding of like, as you shift, the percentage is probably going to shrink, but the dollar amount gets bigger at the same time. So we might budget, you know, 5, 8, 10% of our gross budget today for marketing, but that 5 to 10% we budget today is twice as much as the 20 we were budgeting 3 years ago, right? You're with me on that? Pretty simple math there. But as your company grows, as you're driving shift, you've got to make sure that your budget is shifting with it. And the other part of that, no matter what size you are, what we see across the industry, and there's more data on how hotels budget than anybody else, just because the hotel industry is a little bit larger and it's more mature, so there's more data available. But the percentage of budget people are spending on marketing is increasing for all size companies due to increased competition, costs, and complexity. So we are in a more competitive environment in a hospitality space than we have ever been in the history of hospitality. Costs are higher than they have ever been, and complexity to run a company in today's modern marketplace is more complex than it has ever been. All of that competition, cost, and complexity is leading to an increased percentage of marketing investment across the board. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about all marketing investments, not just kind of the digital side of what we do and what we specialize in. But as you're looking ahead at the future, you have to also understand that your marketing costs are probably going to increase in 2020. And as you're working through your budgeting process and you're increasing your marketing budget for 2020, you need to make sure that you're increasing your revenue to support that so you can maintain profitability. And then the last thing, and this was something one of our customers said to me probably 5 years ago, but that's invest as much as you can that will continue providing a positive ROI above your minimum threshold. So that customer name was Brandy. She talked to me and we're going back and forth, and she was on one package with us and she was looking to upgrade. And I remember her statement, she was like, Matt, I will invest as much money as I can as long as you keep providing the ROI that you're providing. So whether I invest $1,000, $10,000, or $100,000, if you can keep providing the ROI, I will make the investment because it means my company has grown. And that it makes a lot of sense, right? But understanding and thinking about it as an investment and saying, like, it's not about how much I spend, it's about how much I invest in the return that I'm getting on that investment. And when I'm confident in the return that I'm getting on that investment, I don't care how much I spend. I'll spend $1 million on marketing if I'm getting a 3x return on that, right? Who wouldn't? Because it means I got 3 million back. I'd rather spend $1 million than 100,000 if I'm getting a 3x return, or than 10,000, or than 1,000. So you just got to understand that. But you also have to have a partner you trust, because I had that conversation probably 3 times with Brandy over the course of 2 years, the first 2 years of our partnership. But that last time I had that conversation with Brandy, and this is years ago, but that last time I had it, I said, Brandy, you are in the sweet spot. If we increase your marketing budget anymore, my concern is that we will actually start to see diminishing returns and your ROI will go down. And that's a common theory, the theory of diminishing returns. It's a common economic theory, but you have to have a partner you trust to say it's time to spend less, or it's time to not spend more, right? And being able to understand that and having a partner that's committed to the long-term relationship. I still have that relationship. They're still a customer. They've been a customer for 6 years, but I have that relationship because at that point she came to us and said, hey, Matt, we want to spend more. This is going well. We've upgraded 3 times in the last 2 years. What more can we do? I said, nothing. We're doing exactly the right mix for you, and you're spending the right part of your budget. I don't see other opportunities within your current mix to spend more and get the same return. So she had the trust in us to bring that to the table and say that. And we had that responsibility as a good partner to look at the long-term of the relationship and say, no, don't spend more. You're right where you need to be. Now, of course, that was 3 years ago. So things have changed and we've added some things. We've added some products, and that's evolved. And we've gone back to Brandy and had that conversation when those things evolved. But having that partnership and that trust is such a key part of a successful relationship. So I'm telling you that to be able to say you've got to look at it as an investment. You need to understand the ROI. And at the same time you're understanding the ROI, you need to understand not everything is that simple, right? It's not that simple to measure ROI, $1 in, $3 out. I was just at VRMA last week, as I referenced, and I signed a customer at VRMA, new customer. It was exciting. And that's always great. We love doing that. Love bringing new customers on board, right? That's why we're there, a big part of why we're there. But I thought, okay, they came to my session. That's why I signed this customer. But then I came back and I looked in our CRM and I found that customer's name, and I saw all the times that they've interacted with us. I saw all the different conferences we've been to together. I saw the newsletters that they'd opened. I've seen the webinars that they attended. I was like, oh, wow. So it wasn't just about this conference. I haven't talked to this potential customer before, but they have come to webinars. They've read our newsletters. They've probably talked to our other customers. All of that was contributing to ROI, but I signed them at the VRMA conference. So in that same way that the VRMA conference was a part of what made them become a customer, it wasn't the only thing. So ROI is much more complex than oftentimes we want it to be. We want to look at that last attribution and say, okay, I want to attach that new customer or that booking you got to the VRMA conference, or to that pay-per-click campaign, or to that email marketing campaign you sent out, or to that social post that you did. You want to attach it to something, because then you can get ROI and you can measure it. And that's important, and you need to do that. But you also have to understand it's more complex than that, and it's not that simple. So track it, measure it, look at your investments, but also understand, and you got to go with your gut a little bit on some of those things and say, okay, is this working the way I think it needs to work? All right, one of the other things you need to do, and this is probably the easiest thing for you to do, is understand, is this a major project year? Is this a year you need to do some major project, new photography, a new website, some new software investment, some major renovation? If you're a hotel or a B&B and you own your own vacation rentals, you're renovating, like major investments that you're making into making yourself more marketable. Understanding those things. The good news is a lot of this stuff, and I can specifically speak for the website solution, but the cost, or excuse me, our website solution, the cost of having a world-class website is a fraction of what it was 5 or 10 years ago. I just talked to a potential customer this morning. They said, I spent $25,000 on that website you're looking at and critiquing. I was like, I'm so sorry, because you could have spent way less with us and had a much better product. So if you're thinking about those things, understand that for many of them, renovations and construction aside, I'm managing 2 remodel projects right now, one in our office and one in my house. And I can attest the cost of construction is not going down, but technology is making a lot of other things get less expensive. So you can have a world-class website, you can have world-class photography, and it doesn't have to be as expensive as it used to be. So that's some good news as you're thinking about your budgeting, you're thinking about your projects, but make sure you check all your options. So if a new website is on the table for you in 2020, or before the end of the year even, because it takes us 30 days to get sites live, so it could be tomorrow for you, but talk to us about websites, because I'd hate to see another person spend $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 on a website when there are solutions that are better at a lower cost, but you've got to know what's out there. So have the conversation with us. Just drop me an email. I'd love to talk to you about it and see what's out there. And the same is true for software. Like, there's so much technology that has made software development less expensive than it used to. So software costs are coming down as well, which is great news for many of you, while everything else is getting more complex all around you. So understanding, is it a project year? What major projects do you need to be doing, and budgeting for those things accordingly, and making sure you find the right partner for those things. So a couple other things, and this relates to kind of some of the change that we see coming in 2020, but some things to think about if you invest in Google Ads. If a quick show of hands, if you can use the raise your hand function in the GoToWebinar, what percentage of us are doing Google Ads? I would love to know the answer to that question. So just raise your hand in the panel there. Awesome, seeing those raised hands. Thank you. Yep. And that's about what I thought. Yep. But looks like we got about 2/3 of people raising their hands. Could be that the other third is off popping a bottle of wine somewhere after we're talking about budgeting, trying to make this more exciting for themselves. But yeah, a lot of us with our hands raised. It's way more fun to do it at a conference than to do it on GoToWebinar, but thank you for playing along. But if you invest in Google Ads, there's a couple things we want to touch on. One, it's going to change a lot in 2020. Everything is, but it's going to change a lot. One myth that I want to bust, and I hear this all the time, so I want to bust this for you right now, for those of us that are tuned in, listening to the webinar, catching the recording, whatever. You don't have to spend more than an OTA or a competitor to win bookings. Like, it seems like there's this mindset, and I don't know where it comes from, but if I can't spend more than Airbnb, if I can't spend more than Booking.com, if I can't spend more than my competitor down the street, I might as well not even do it. And that is absolutely not true. And the reason is, if you really think about what's happening, every time someone does a Google search for the keywords that you're targeting, you have an opportunity to win that click. And if you're not there because you budget nothing, you don't win that click. And every time you have an opportunity to win the click and you win the click, you have an opportunity then to win the booking. So I don't care if you spend $50 or $500,000 a month on Google Ads, you spend $50 and you spend $1 per click, you won 50 clicks. Booking.com might win 500,000 clicks, but you won those 50. And that's what matters, because those 50 can convert into a booking, and that booking might be worth $500 and you got a 10x return on your ad spend. So you just got to look at it a little bit differently. And I'd love to blow that myth up for anybody who's holding on to that myth to say, well, if I can't spend more, I'm not going to win. And that's absolutely not true. There are places in marketing that's true, but pay-per-click Google Ads is not one of them. SEO is not one of them. Actually, most things in marketing aren't one of them. You just have to think about it differently. So if you're leaning into Google Ads now, and this isn't just true of Google Ads, although we see more people using that than others, so we talk about that more, but expect costs to rise in 2020. Increased competition is increasing costs in Google Ads. Or the alternative is to get more aggressive and more advanced with your bid strategies. So I talked to our team about that and talked about, we expect costs to rise at the beginning of 2019, but I'll tell you that we hired some new people onto our team into the department of our, specifically our paid search advertising, and they are flat out better at Google Ads than the people who were in the department before. and I say that to say, like, we got more aggressive, we got more intelligent, we got more advanced with our bid strategies. Unfortunately, so many Google Ads campaigns we see are not intelligent, they're not aggressive, they're not advanced. And there's a statistic from a company called WordStream, which does software for the Google Ads business. And they have a stat that says 70% of Google Ads budgets are wasted. And when I first read it, I was like, no way, 70%. And I was like, yeah, that's actually probably true. Now that I'm on the other side of it and I've been through it and I've helped customers get on the other side of bad Google Ads campaigns, it's absolutely true. I was on the phone with a potential customer this morning and heard the same story. Well, I was spending $2,500 a month on Google Ads, but I got into the data and realized how bad our ads were and how low my return on ad spend was. So I cut it off, and I know we need to start again. So that's so true. Like, they had a bad experience with their past agency. They were wasting their money. They turned it off, and now they're looking for a new partner, and we're having that conversation. So that is happening all the time, but don't turn a blind eye to that. Hopefully you're monitoring that and managing that. And it doesn't mean that good companies don't make honest mistakes either, right? I mean, we've made our share of mistakes, trust me. Google Ads is difficult, it's complex, there's a lot of ways to screw up. But zoom out a little bit and look at the big picture of the relationship and say, okay, not just this month, not just this week, but let's look at this year. Have we had success from a Google Ads perspective? Are we good with our return on ad spend? Are we happy there? And that's the indicator of, like, do I have a good partner here? Not, did they mess up on a particular keyword? Yeah, everybody's going to mess up. Nobody's perfect. It's maybe a little bit more painful for you when they mess up on Google Ads because you can see directly how much money that mess up costs you. So I understand that, but you got to look at the bigger picture and then look at a wider date range of, was this successful? Don't just zoom in on one real narrow point, or let somebody else zoom in on one really narrow point and point out like that one itty bitty flaw, when in reality the overall campaign is working well. So a few things when I talk about getting more aggressive and advanced, generally speaking, what we're trying to accomplish is a cost per click of between 50 cents and $1. And that can vary a lot. It can go higher in certain markets, but that's what we're trying to manage to and make sure we're getting creative and aggressive enough to be able to manage to that. And then manage to a return on ad spend of 5 to 10x. And 5 to 10x when measured in e-commerce conversion revenue. That's what we want to see. That's what we're working towards. It's difficult to measure phone bookings. There are ways out there to do it. We're a partner with Navis, and we use their software for many of our customers to measure phone bookings, but getting that incremental measure on the phone bookings can be very expensive as well. So typically what we would do is we would capture what our return on ad spend is for our e-commerce side of our business, and that's where our goal of 5 to 10x comes in. And then we would look at, okay, what percentage of your bookings come by phone? And let's assume that that same percentage stays true for Google Ads bookings. So if half of my bookings come by phone, then it's safe to estimate that my return on ad spend is actually double what I'm seeing in e-commerce from Google Analytics. And it's double because half come by phone, half come online. We're able to extrapolate that out and get a full picture, because it's probably just as likely that someone would pick up the phone to call you as they would to book online if they got to your site from a Google ad or a Google organic search. That person's just as likely to call you as someone who got there from another source. So extrapolating that out a little bit will help you get a better handle of that. So really our goal is a 10 to 20x return on ad spend. But when we look at it inside of Google Analytics, we want to see a 5 to 10x, knowing that we're picking up phone bookings that are a little bit harder to track. So hopefully that's helpful if you find yourself investing in Google Ads. If you're not investing in Google Ads, I want to talk to you for a minute. I'll be honest, I was kind of the anti-Google Ads guy for like the first 8 years of Q4 Launch's history. And I've taught on a lot of webinars. We want to be less reliant on Google Ads, and I still believe that. I still believe we want to drive organic traffic higher to be less reliant. That's still a big goal that we work to accomplish at Q4 Launch. But my team has won me over in a lot of ways because of the return on ad spend that they've been able to accomplish for our customer. And what I know about Google Ads, based on the return on ad spends that we're accomplishing for our customers, is that our cost to acquire a guest is lower than OTAs. And if my cost to acquire a guest is lower than an OTA, I would rather acquire a guest through a Google ad where I control the relationship, I control the brand, I get all the contact information, all those great things about them booking direct, than I would through getting them via an OTA. And there's a couple other things we love about Google Ads. One is it's predictable revenue, right? It's predictable revenue, so I can turn on Google Ads, and as long as it's set up and it's running and my data's good and I have continuity there, I can increase my budget to create a predictable outcome. And at the same point, if my pace report says, hey, Matt, you're crushing it, you're booked way ahead of pace, you're trending ahead, you're going to sell out for this season, I can scale my budget back down if my pace reports tell me I'm ahead of pace, and I choose to do that. There's reasons I might not choose to do that, and we're not going to talk about pace reports and revenue management right now in time, but I can make those choices. Whereas if I didn't have this part of my strategy, it's really difficult. One of the other things I love about it is as long as it's set up and it's running properly and you have optimized campaigns, I can get bookings really quick from Google Ads. So that doesn't mean that you can get them really quick if you're not running ads, right? If you're not running ads and you don't have a baseline, you don't have history, it takes about 30 days to really get a good solid baseline of data to be able to measure and then improve on. It doesn't just happen overnight. But I might be spending X just kind of all year, but then I know in a season where I look at my pace report and it says, oh, Matt, like you're tracking behind pace, you need to do something to pick up these bookings. I can increase Google Ads and I can get those bookings pretty quickly. So it's a lever in my overall strategy that I can use to drive, turn the faucet on and turn the faucet off as I need to. The other reason I think you might want to consider investing in Google Ads is that I believe we'll see less organic traffic in 2020 due to the Google hotel and vacation rental search changes. I think we're going to see less organic traffic for other reasons. The search engine world has been predicting that for years. There's a stat out there that says 50% of all Google searches never leave the search results because of all the information Google has on there now. I think that stat's actually a little out of context in our industry, but it's partially true for our industry. I think it's a little out of context in our industry, but it's partially true. But that, the zero result, if you're familiar with that, the featured snippets, like there's so many things that are leading people away from clicking into sites in ways they didn't used to. And then the Google hotel and vacation rental search changes that have happened in the hotel space. Last November happened in the vacation rental space, kind of the spring into summer. I think that's going to drive traffic lower in 2020. And most of our customers see about half of their direct bookings coming from Google organic search. And if we're going to see a potential decrease where half of our bookings coming from, we might need to think about approaching Google Ads differently, either doing it for the first time if you're not, or potentially increasing budget if you are. Now, at the same time that I say that, know that our team is working really hard and having great success at developing strategies to offset the changes Google's making and get more creative with our approach. And that's constantly, you're constantly reinventing and getting more creative. And while we have done that over the last several years, and we have been able to drive growth even in a season where a lot of people are saying it's not happening from a Google perspective because of all the changes. Will that continue with all the changes that continue to make? I don't know, but we're developing new strategies, new ideas to make sure that we're driving growth for our customers and having those conversations all the time. And you need to be partnered with an agency that's doing the same thing for you, really driving the envelope forward, pushing the envelope forward, and bringing those strategies to the table for you. All right, let's keep moving along. It's probably enough shout out for Google for one webinar. The other thing, and I'm going to hit this slide pretty quick, it's probably way too much text, but competition is on the rise. I talked about this early on, but we're seeing more competition in the hospitality space than we have ever seen before. And here's just a few stats to back that up. Record hotel construction continues, and not just hotels, but second homes. I don't know what your market looks like, but in Charleston, there are houses being built everywhere. There's condo communities being built. There's hotels being built, like on every corner, it seems like. And as I've traveled around the U.S. this year doing conferences and speaking engagements, I've seen that to be true in many, many markets. We also know that investors are buying vacation real estate like they never have before. Specifically, a statistic from AirDNA's index of August 2019, 1.8 million homes were bought specifically for the purpose of generating vacation rental income in 2018 alone. 1.8 million homes were bought for that purpose that were not in the market before. 1.8 million homes, 1.8 million new inventory inserted into the marketplace. We also know more homeowners are listing primary and secondary homes than have ever done so before. And the primary homes are being listed on peak weeks. One of the things that has shocked me in this new Airbnb-preneur stage is how many of my friends, which are middle market income, successful young professionals, with most of which with families and kids, who live in a great market of Charleston or somewhere else that has great demand, and on peak weeks or weekends, they will plan their vacation on those weeks and they will put their home on Airbnb. They'll put their home on Airbnb. It's their primary home, not a secondary home, but it's their primary home, and 4 weeks a year or 2 weeks a year or whatever the number is, they will Airbnb their house, and they'll make, I have friends that pay their entire mortgage off of renting their house 4 weeks a year. I have friends that pay their entire vacation budget and are taking vacations they never dreamed of taking before because they couldn't fit them in their budget. But now they leave and they Airbnb their house while they're gone, and that Airbnb income pays for the vacation that they're taking. And I'm not encouraging that necessarily. I'm not discouraging it either. Everybody's got to make their own decision about that. You might feel one way or the other about that. I don't necessarily care right now how you feel about that. What I'm saying is that's happening. That's reality, and it's increasing the competition for everyone on today's call. I don't care if you're a professional vacation manager, it's increasing the competition in your market in a way you can't reach, and it's actually typically priced lower than professionally managed properties are. That's what we see from the people that manage them themselves. They're not advanced, and they're not aggressive, and they're not counting on that income, so they price things lower than they need to be pricing them because they just don't know any better. So they're priced lower, which puts price pressure on you. Same is true for hotels and B&Bs. It's shifting that marketplace a little bit. Competition is on the rise. We also, another stat from that AirDNA index is that Airbnb and Vrbo listings have increased by 105% in the last 3 years. So in 3 years, the number of listings has doubled. Crazy statistic. We also know OTAs are spending more than they ever had to acquire customers. So the competition from all the ways you can possibly look at it is higher than it has ever been. And in a time where competition is increasing or where supply is increasing, as a business owner, you have to increase demand just to maintain your equilibrium, just to maintain your status quo, if you will. If supply is increasing in your market, and I would be hard pressed to find a market where supply is not increasing. If anybody says they're in a market that does not have an increasing supply, I'm going to call your bluff on that. I would love to see an email, but I would call your bluff on that and show you some stats that probably say it's not true. There probably is increasing supply. I don't care how remote your market is. You have to increase demand just to stay where you are, not even to grow. You have to increase demand just to stay where you are as supply increases from a revenue perspective. Because what happens is, and if you've been through Economics 101, this is old news to you. If you haven't, here's a crash course. But when supply exceeds demand, you have surplus. When supply exceeds demand, you have a surplus. That's the graphic on the right, graphic on the left, and price goes down. When everything is perfect and supply and demand meet in the perfect place, you're at equilibrium, and you know, the clouds open up and the heavens sing. That never really happens. When demand exceeds supply, price goes up, and you have a shortage. And this drives high occupancy rates, it drives rate gouging, it drives a lot of other things. People take notice, and investors move into the marketplace. A friend of mine used to have a lot of vacation rentals in the Charleston market. And when he entered the market, there were about 200 listings on Airbnb. And he's like, Matt, this is crazy. Like, he did the whole master leaseback thing. He got apartments, he rented them. Great, good for him. He was an entrepreneur. Loved seeing that story and that success. It was kind of interesting to see. But over the course of about 3 years, he dropped all those leases. And I was like, hey, what's going on? Like, Mark, tell me about, like, what's happening? Why have you dropped all these leases? You were doing so good. He's like, when I started, there was 300 listings on Airbnb in Charleston. There's 2,000 listings now. The cost of leasing an apartment and the headache of managing it and everything else, it's just not worth it anymore, because that increase in supply has driven price down. So he got out of the business. Now he does it in other markets. But he got out of the business in Charleston, where I came to know him, and has moved on, and he's in another city now. But because the incredible opportunity that was there, investors took notice. There was 2,000 some listings on Airbnb. There's probably even more now. Now the city has come in to shut it down, but you get the point. Like, as supply increased, demand didn't keep up, price went down. So if you're in a market where supply is increasing, you have to increase demand, and you have to come up with a strategy or partner with somebody to come up with a strategy to figure out how you're going to increase demand, not even to increase revenue, but just to stay where you are, which is not a super encouraging message. Hopefully you can create a strategy and drive revenue growth on top of that, but just staying where you are sometimes in a market that's blowing up is success in and of itself, because you got to hustle hard just to accomplish that. So where should you be investing your marketing dollars? We want to touch on that. That's an important thing to be thinking of. And this is by no means an end-all be-all list, right? So what I've done here is I've taken the direct part of your bookings, and I've broken that down based on some channels you might think about investing into, and then looked at a swath of our customers, a large sampling, to be able to say, okay, when we look at e-commerce data, what percentage of direct bookings are coming from those channels? Hoping that data can then inform some of the decisions you're making from a marketing perspective. Now, it's not as linear as the percentage you see on this slide is the percentage you should be investing. It's just not that simple. I wish it was, but it's not that simple. But you do need to think at it in correlation with these things. It's not a linear, but it is correlated. So you need to be thinking about that. So what we see is that typically when we look at organic search, so I'm putting search engine optimization and content creation and blogging together there from an investing marketing decision, that bucket typically drives 50 to 60% of direct bookings. Doesn't mean you need to spend 50 to 60% of your overall budget on it, but if you're not spending very much or at all on it, you probably need to be spending something on it in the future. Going back a couple slides there, you also heard me say that I think we might see a decrease in traffic from this source. So you may need to invest more to maintain the result that you have in 2020 and shift the way you think about that a little bit. Paid search advertising typically for our customers drives 5 to 10% of their direct bookings. Of course, those that budget more, it can be a higher percentage. Those that budget less, lower percentage. Email marketing typically driving 5 to 10% of direct bookings. I will tell you, and we don't do a lot that's very, we don't do a lot of email that's very sales oriented. We're doing more of it, but our customers that are getting the highest revenue associated with email marketing are those that are putting very sales oriented messages in their email campaign. So we're doing more and more of it as an agency than we ever have before because it flat out works. Referral sources. Typically referral traffic from most people is on the decline. These could be CVBs, DMOs, people that you're involved with. Typically, in most cases, referral traffic, because a lot of the changes Google's making, we're seeing that traffic almost across the board with some exceptions. Select Registry is one exception. We see traffic from most of our customers who are Select Registry members. If you're a B&B or a hotel on today's webinar, maybe you're a Select Registry member, we see traffic from Select Registry on the rise for the majority of our customers. Now, full disclosure, we might have a little bit vested interest in that because we are Select Registry's agency of record as well. So I see both sides of that equation, so I know what's driving that gain. but it's investing into new strategies and evolving our strategy and not just sitting on our laurels and saying we're going to keep doing the same things we've always done. So not just accepting the fact that most CVBs, DMOs, referral sites are on the decline, but saying, okay, we're going to evolve, we're going to develop new strategies to go after that anyways, even though most of our competitors are struggling, and we're going to try to drive more value than we ever have before, and it's working for them. So that's great. But most referral sources are decreasing. So it's a small percent. It's probably 2 to 5% of our average customers' direct booking. And then social media, typically 0 to 2%. We don't see social media as a big driver of revenue for our customers. Doesn't mean you don't need to have it as a part of an integrated strategy. What we actually see social media, when you study how people book travel, social media tends to be how people will check you out. So they'll find you some way. Then they'll go to your social media presence and they will make a decision while they're there. Does this look like the type of company, property, hotel, fill in the blank that I want to do business with? So it will lose you bookings faster than it will get you bookings. So doing a bad job in social media will lose you bookings. Doing a good job in social media will help increase your conversion rate, I believe, but statistically it's very difficult to prove. So it needs to be part of an integrated strategy, but it is an area that's difficult to attach ROI to. And then I talked about direct traffic earlier as a part of direct bookings. It's a source that shows up in your Google Analytics. It's typically the number 2 highest source of traffic to your site. It's kind of a catch-all bucket of traffic to your site, so it varies greatly across our customer base. So I didn't even want to assign a percentage to it because it varies so much. And then there's literally an other category inside of Google Analytics, and it's usually extremely small. But had to note it because you will see it in your Google Analytics. So where should you be investing your marketing dollars? Think about those things. And I would encourage you to kind of break it down a little bit and understand, not like line item, like how much am I spending on email marketing? I don't know that you need to get that granular with it, but just thinking about where revenue is typically coming from and then understanding like, okay, am I doing those things first of all? And if you're not, maybe you need to lean into one of those channels to drive growth for yourself in 2020. The other part of that is just looking for some opportunities that aren't even mentioned there. We're doing a lot of work in the marketing automation space right now, and we see a tremendous amount of opportunity to use combined guest life cycles and marketing automation together to increase revenue for our customers. And that's some of what we're working on right now. But I think there's a tremendous opportunities with things from a marketing perspective that aren't even listed within this mix. So it's just a high level overview. And then understanding that as you're thinking about all this, executing an integrated marketing plan will help reduce overall costs. If you have an integrated strategy versus a fragmented strategy that you're not doing all these things, or you've got different people doing all these things and you're stuck trying to manage it all, understanding how all that comes together, an integrated plan, an integrated partner is going to help you reduce costs versus having these things fragmented apart by a whole bunch of different people. Every single time that we have a customer and they start with us just doing one piece or a couple pieces, we won't let anybody start with one piece, but a couple pieces of the puzzle, and they have somebody else doing other pieces, every single time the customer sees a lower ROI and is more frustrated through the process and typically ends up coming on board for all of the things that we're talking about here. Because as you fragment it apart, ROI typically goes down and frustration goes up. So as such, we almost exclusively onboard people for an integrated approach. So I don't, whether you work with us or not is not the point of that. The point of that is whoever you work with, you should be working with an integrated strategy and having a partner that you trust to represent you from an integrated perspective who can bring a team of experts together for all of those things, all of those different elements of a great strategy. So definitely take that to heart. And in doing that well, you'll reduce your own frustration, and you should, as a part of that, reduce your overall marketing costs as well. So a couple things I want to call out. I'm really excited. We're making some changes to our webinar strategy in the remaining 2 months of this year. So tune in, because we're going to be doing some things we've never done before, which I'm particularly excited about. I love doing things I've never done before. But save these dates for our upcoming webinars. Make sure to put these on your calendar. November 5th, diving into how to develop your marketing plan. November 20th, what your website needs in 2020. Coincidence, that's on November 20th. November 26th, Google 2020, developing your search plan. December 3rd, 5 tips for revenue generating email marketing. We're going to touch on some of that revenue stuff with email I talked about just a second ago. December 10th, guest lifecycle automation. December 17th, blogging and social media. And we're probably going to slide some others in there as well, just because we really need to slide one on Google Ads in there. So we're going to find a date for that. and slide that in there too. But get those dates on your calendar. We'll be opening up registration for that soon. We're going to pull that together in a unique way. Watch for messaging coming from us on that. They will be shorter sessions. And I'm going to try not to give away too much that our team's working on, but they will be shorter sessions so you can get a lot of information really quickly and get back to business, and try to make those available in some unique ways for you. So I'm excited about that, excited about what we're working on, and looking forward to seeing you on those things. If you remember at the very beginning of our time together today, I said it really, understanding how to budget effectively starts with a Google Analytics analysis to say, okay, where am I today? So as I understand where I am today, it helps me to think about where am I going. So understanding where you are today is something we would love to help you with. So we're going to launch a poll, understanding what's working and what's not, a free Google Analytics analysis, help you break down what sources are your direct bookings coming from, and help you understand how does that stack up against similar companies. So we're going to help make that available for you so that you can get a baseline of, okay, here's where I am. How does that compare to the marketplace? And then have a quick conversation with us about what your goals are, and we'll give you some high-level ideas on what you need to do going forward to accomplish those goals. So totally free resource available from us. We'd love to help you get on your journey to get started. So if you'd like to take advantage of that, simply click yes, please get in touch, and we'll follow up with you to schedule that. If you don't, maybe you're a customer of ours, so we're already doing that for you, simply click no thank you, no big deal. Or if you'd like to talk to us about what it looks like to have a marketing partnership with us, we'd love to have that conversation with you as well. Click that last option there. Please call me about a marketing partnership with Q4 Launch. We'd love to get about 70% of people of our attendees today to vote. It always kind of helps me. There's a poll in front of you, so like I don't know what you do, but vote on it. I don't care what you vote, but just vote. It helps us keep things moving forward and make sure that our GoToWebinar engagement ratios are good to keep our account in a healthy situation. So if you could help us with that by just voting, again, yes, no, or please call us. We don't care which one you click on, but it does help us keep that moving along. While we're doing that, if you have any questions, please drop those in the chat panel. We would be happy to answer any questions we can for you about anything we talked about budgeting, about different software systems, about ideas you might be bouncing around. Any questions we can answer for you, we'd be happy to answer those questions for you as best we can. So we will go ahead and get this poll closed out. And then if you have any questions, please do drop those in the chat panel. Last chance here to vote in that poll. If you haven't voted yet, requesting that free Google Analytics analysis, please go ahead and vote in that poll. If you are watching today's recording and you're trying to click on the screen and nothing is happening, it's because you're watching a recording, email me and we'd be happy to follow up with you and get you connected to take advantage of that free Google Analytics analysis. So let's go ahead and get that closed out. If you're watching the recording, email us and we will make sure to get that content available to you. All right. All right, so questions and answers. My email address, phone number are both there on the screen. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. First question here from Julie. As you're talking about email marketing, what email marketing platform do you recommend? That's a great question, Julie. This is something we're kind of, every year we kind of review that about this time of year. So we're reviewing it right now and probably have some new recommendations on that here shortly. But right now, kind of some core ones that we recommend, MailChimp is great, Constant Contact is great as well. And experimenting with it a little bit, probably those are the two industry leaders that are most commonly used. I think both of them do a great job understanding what your unique needs are. Do you want to do marketing automation? Do you not? Understanding kind of some of those things can be very beneficial in that overall journey to which one's right for you. Well, hopefully that helps you there, Julie. Next question, can you flash up those dates again? Yeah, absolutely. For our upcoming webinars, for saving the dates, yes, let me get back to that slide here. There we go. Saving the dates for these upcoming webinars, make sure to get those on your calendar as well. Thank you for that question. And we will be adding some dates to this list. And I don't believe that the registration is live for these yet, but it will be soon. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And I'm, as I mentioned, super excited about some of the things we're going to be doing there, trying some new things, which will be awesome and exciting. Did I mention I'm excited? I'm excited. I think that's it. I think those were all of our questions in the chat panel. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to email us, call us. If you're thinking about a new website or you're thinking about new marketing ideas, trying to drive to higher numbers, or you need a new partner, we would love to talk to you. We love developing new partnerships and helping achieve mutual success, and we'd love to have a conversation with you. I'll get my information back on the screen here real quick so that you have that, but we would love to get in touch with you. You can reach out to me directly there, and we'd love to get in touch with you. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. I hope you have a great rest of your October. I cannot believe we're staring down the end of October here. Hopefully you have a great Halloween, and we will look forward to talking to everybody soon.